first of all, let's just remember that the objective of some types of taxes is to raise the price, right? That's the whole point of the carbon tax, is to increase the price. So if you're going to say that these types of taxes don't influence prices, well, then what the heck is the point of having a carbon tax in the first place? Right? Like, so let's remember that. And gas tax relief immediately would save drivers 18 to 30 cents a liter.
Hey, this is the Canadian Taxpayers Federation podcast dedicated to lower taxes, less waste, and accountable government. I'm here with my friend, Franco Terrazzano. Franco, you're in Ottawa and you're holding down the fort. And I know in your spare time, what you like to do for fun is to figure out how governments can quit wasting our money and actually save us money by cutting taxes. Now, you and I do a lot of interviews. And quite often we'll hear things like, oh, well, what is the government to do? Inflation is a global phenomenon. There's nothing possibly that the Trudeau government can do. Yeah. So you did a crazy deep dive on tax cuts and such happening around the world. Tell our listeners what Canada could be doing when compared to other countries.
Yeah, we found that there's a lot of other countries, a lot of other national governments that are cutting taxes, all while Ottawa continues to stick us with higher carbon tax bills, higher alcohol tax bills, and is taking more money away from our wallets through payroll tax hikes. So we found 51 other national governments that are doing the right thing and providing their citizens with relief. 51 other national governments, and a lot of these governments, too, are our peers. We found more than half of the G7 and more than half of the G20 countries that have been cutting taxes, and 2/3 of the OECD countries that are cutting taxes. So you have a whole bunch of other countries that are doing the right thing, all while Ottawa continues to crank up the taxes that we are forced to pay.
And I think this is critical because usually when I'm on the air with a host and they say, oh, well, you know, other countries are dealing with inflation. What are we to do? My usual mom response is, well, if all your friends jumped off a bridge, would you do so too? But you did the real work here, and you've got hyperlinks in all of your examples. And a lot of them are our peer countries. Like, you're not cherry picking, like, you know, Guatemala didn't just cut its taxes on gummy bears, right? This is real money.
Nothing wrong with that.
No, nothing wrong with that. So what other countries were actually cutting taxes, and how do we compare?
Well, Australia cut its gas tax in half. So that's pretty big. The United Kingdom. Yeah, the United Kingdom is also providing significant gas tax relief. Let me just check the numbers here. Worth about £5 billion. Now, depending on the exchange rate, that's around $7 billion Canadian. So that's real relief. You got the government of South Korea cut its gas taxes by 30%. Germany cut its gas taxes by 30 euro cents a liter. The Netherlands cut its gas tax by 21%. So a lot of our peers are cutting gas taxes, all while our gas taxes are going up. You have Ireland, India, you have Portugal, New Zealand. They're also cutting gas taxes. And remember, Chris, we actually ran a huge billboard campaign and social media campaign that showed just the laundry list of other countries that are cutting their gas taxes. And then we had a country and a picture of a prime minister who wasn't cutting gas taxes. Of course, that was Prime Minister Justin Trudeau and Canada. And we even included that billboard ad right in front of the prime minister's office. So every time Trudeau and his staff were going to work in the morning or afternoon, who knows, they would have to walk across our billboard ad. But look, other countries are also cutting different types of taxes. Italy cut income taxes. France and Spain cut electricity taxes. Belgium, Austria, Norway, they cut consumption taxes as well.
I wonder why we seem to be stuck in this echo chamber, because, you know, Canadians travel a lot. It is a fully fledged member of the G7. We're you know, a big deal for our size. Yep. And it just seems like, you know, the message just isn't getting in here, and we're all got kind of Stockholm syndrome, and we're not asking or demanding tax cuts. I will say those billboards did have an effect. I've still got friends in Ottawa and their staffers, and they walk back and forth and say, man, you guys are cheeky. Like, you're right out in front of Parliament Hill. Now, we have had some little success stories provincially here in Canada. I'm here in Alberta, and your old stomping ground. And to their credit, the Alberta government cut their gas tax by 13 cents a litre way back in the spring. So all this time, all this summer, people have been saving 13 cents a litre. That's real savings. I know Ontario, they finally kept their election promise from the last election. They cut it. We have some relief out in Atlantic Canada too.
Yeah, Newfoundland and Labrador, they also cut gas taxes.
Yeah, that's really good to see. Okay, so fair enough. You know, we have some provincial examples where they're cutting taxes. What do we want people to do? You know, we just finished explaining that we've got all these other countries that have cut these taxes right when they need them most, when they need the savings most. What do we want listeners to do? What do we want the government to do when it comes to these taxes? How do we push them into actually taking action?
Well, at the very least, it should have been a no-brainer to not raise taxes during the middle of a pandemic when people were losing their job, taking cuts, losing their small business, and eventually dealing with nearly 4 decades high inflation. But of course, we did see the federal government raise taxes. Let's look at the carbon tax. I mean, the carbon tax has gone up 3 times during the middle of a pandemic, right? Even after rebates, the average household is still paying hundreds of dollars this year, according to the government's own independent budget watchdog. But then payroll taxes have also gone up. So this year, a worker is directly paying about $4,500 in payroll taxes this year. If you're making $65,000 or more, a business also has to pay a similar amount there. So look, cut those payroll taxes right off the bat. Cut the carbon tax, completely scrap it, put it in the trash can, along with cutting other federal gas taxes. And the reason we're always harping on gas taxes, well, there's many reasons, but especially now, is that gas tax relief could be immediate, right? The Trudeau government could immediately cut federal gas taxes and save drivers anywhere between 18 and 30 cents per liter of gas, depending on which province you're in. That's $20 for a family saving when they fill up their minivan. I know you guys like to play the how much will that car consume in carbon taxes game. But look, the federal government charges a plethora of different taxes, right? Gas taxes, taxes on taxes, income taxes, sales taxes, payroll taxes. So regardless of which tax our federal government would choose to cut, the key point is that there are things the government could do to mitigate inflation and allow Canadians to keep more of their own money.
Okay, I'm going to do 2 things here. One, I'm going to play devil's advocate, but that's in a second. First, at risk of watching your head explode.
Yeah, it's gonna.
You know what's coming. How are payroll taxes, Franco?
I hate
I've seen a lot of times. Sorry. I mean, lucky I'm far away from you. So I've seen a lot of smarty pants people on the television recently forgetting what a tax is, especially folks in Ottawa. So explain, why are payroll taxes taxes?
Yeah. They're kind of twisting themselves into a pretzel, trying to pretend like these payroll taxes aren't taxes. I mean, look, I'm sure we'll get into a deep dive into one of these episodes. That's called foreshadowing, ladies and gentlemen. But but let me just right off the bat. Look, a payroll tax is not a fee and it's not a price. I mean, primarily, number one, because it's mandatory. Right. Yes. So a price or a fee is like when you go to Subway and order a sandwich. That's a price. You don't have to go to Subway and order a sandwich. Or when you buy insurance for Manulife, or when you buy a ticket on Via Rail. Those are prices and fees. But hey, you don't get a choice. The tax man doesn't give you a choice on whether or not you have to pay CPP or EI. That's a hint, right? Right there, that's a hint. But even moving past the obvious, right, the mandatory nature of CPP and EI, even moving beyond that, when you pay into your CPP, you're actually not directly paying for your service. Okay, so that's different than another type of government fee, like a passport. So when you go purchase or renew a passport, you pay $160 directly for the service of renewing your passport. But what most people don't know is that when you're forced to pay into the CPP, you're not saving for your retirement. You're largely saving for someone else's retirement, and then are hoping on the goodwill of politicians decades from now to eventually get some of that money back, maybe through your own CPP payment. So does that kind of make sense? Number one, they're mandatory. That's a tax. But number two is that you're not actually directly paying for your service. You're largely paying for someone else's pension or what have you.
Yeah, they're also called taxes on the CRA website.
Yeah.
Like, I'm just saying, like, we may not be the tax experts, but the Canada Revenue Agency, they sure are. And they call them taxes. So just to put that one to bed, it was one of those silly, like, Ottawa bubble dust-ups, but it gets a lot of play. So I wanted to put that one to bed. Second, this is a devil's advocate thing. I'm also hearing some of those smart folks say, okay, well, if we cut taxes right now, it's just going to make inflation worse. What's that
Yeah.
line of reasoning, and do you agree? Is that a risk?
Well, first of all, let's just remember that the objective of some types of taxes is to raise the price, right? That's the whole point of the carbon tax, is to increase the price. So if you're going to say that these types of taxes don't influence prices, well, then what the heck is the point of having a carbon tax in the first place? Right? Like, so let's remember that. And gas tax relief immediately would save drivers 18 to 30 cents a liter. But even if we set aside the wonky theory economics of it all, which I hate to set aside, we can even just look. We can even just look empirically. Ontario cut its gas taxes in July, and Statistics Canada reported in July and noted that, quote, gasoline prices fell the most in Ontario, 12.2% decline, where the provincial government temporarily lowered the gasoline tax. Okay, so empirically, we saw that you cut gas taxes weird, the price went down. Now, following Alberta's gas tax cut in April, a University of Calgary economist noted, quote, while the inflation rate nationally rose in April, the rate declined in Alberta. Falling gasoline prices because of the tax holiday is the reason, end quote.
Yeah, that all makes sense to me. Kind of sounds still like it's theoretical, but just practically speaking, if I'm saving, that $5 or $6 or whatever it is I'm saving on my fuel fill-ups during the week, that's money I can use to cope with higher prices at the grocery store. I'm better able to try to afford the ground beef, or maybe even, the beef roast if it's on sale, because sure as heck no, that's all gone up. Meat has gone up a lot. And so doesn't that just make sense? Like, if I have more of my money in my pocket, can't I use that to cope with the higher inflationary costs of life?
And look, if the government isn't printing new dollars out of thin air, if the government isn't borrowing new dollars, then at the very least, a tax cut at least is shifting spending away from the politicians and bureaucrats who spend way too much money, and at least allowing Canadians to have more in their pockets, right, to be able to afford gasoline, dental, groceries, what have you, the point that you're making. And look, the Fraser Institute, they do a report, I think, every year where they add up all the different taxes that we pay to all the different levels of government: property taxes, sales taxes, income taxes, import taxes, taxes on taxes, you name it, we pay it, it feels like. And they found that the average family, their budget, about 43% of the average Canadian family's budget is going to taxes, right? All the different taxes we pay. Now, that's more than what the average family spends on the basics, the necessities like food, shelter, and clothing combined. Now, even after accounting for inflation, according to the Fraser Institute report, if we brought tax levels back to where they were 3 decades ago, 1992, it's a good year, by the way, the average family's tax bill would decline by about $10,000 every year. So to the point that you raised earlier, just think about how much more affordable all aspects of life would be if families had thousands of extra dollars every year to pay for whatever a family needs or wants. And look, the reason we're paying such high taxes, as we talk about in all of these podcast episodes, is because the government's wasting way too much money. Like the hundreds of millions of dollars announced for companies like Bombardier, or all the pay raises and bonuses that the bureaucrats in Ottawa need to give themselves, or even the sex toy show in Germany, right? Stop wasting so much money, start cutting taxes now.
I think your favorite is that toy show in Germany. I think my favorite out of the Mission Cultural Fund, which is a slush fund for foreign affairs, if anybody doesn't know what it is the fact that diplomats, when they're hungry, can just pick up a magic phone and get a Canadian chef flown out to them. And you pay for it. Like, we're not making this up. You literally pay for this sort of stuff. So frankly, I think history has taught us that people have thrown bales of tea into certain harbors over much less than 43% of your money going to the government through taxes. Franco, thanks for this. Folks, if you want to check out our report on this, there's tons of links in it. Go check out the National Post story that's on this. It's in our show notes.